Good morning from ThoughtStorm Journal. Emotional healing can bring on profound changes in your beliefs. If you're like I was and had no spiritual guidance as a child, no religious upbringing to speak of, it's easy to lean on the side of logic when you choose your beliefs. If you can't see something or prove it physically exists, then as far as you're concerned, it doesn't exist. But it's important to note that the only way I personally was able to heal from my mental illnesses was that I was able to adjust my thinking about any topic if I could start to see new evidence surface about it. But my healing process really started when I learned how to start thinking about every belief I had in a different way. And when I was in the throes of the worst depression I'd ever had in my life, one question I asked myself after years of indifference about the subject was whether or not living creatures like humans really have a soul. And this turned out to be one of the most important questions I would ever ask myself. Because when I was diagnosed with a mental disorder, I was led to believe by doctors that I had faulty neurons and that I needed medication to correct the problem, while spiritual teachers told me something different. They told me I had a spirit that needed nurturing and that my supposed mental illness had come because I was not aligned with the needs of my true soul. And I gotta be honest, at first my logical mind thought this was hokey. But after years of trying to heal via the conventional medicine route with no real success, I eventually evolved the idea that I might need to change my thinking drastically. Did I, in fact, really have a soul inside of me? And if so, how could I even begin to understand it or even believe it? This was a really tough journey for someone like me with no spiritual upbringing and no frame of reference. But here's what I found out and how I processed this very controversial subject. It turns out I had made references to the soul throughout my life and didn't realize it. When I have in the past described a person as having no soul, I meant this person was cold and distant and uncaring. But if I describe someone as having a beautiful soul, I usually meant this person had warm, caring, and inviting nature. Each gave off a certain vibration. So if you really think about it, aren't I talking about an energy source? Is it possible that our body is, just like many people believe, a vehicle for your soul? Is it a vehicle like any other vehicle that's actually being driven by a central energy source that just happens to be called a soul? Most people exude something. Whether it's negative or positive, everyone gives off an energy force that other people respond to in kind. Now, when we're trying to put a definition to it, it's difficult. It's really easy to see the soul as that part of us that's intangible or indefinable. But is it really? If your soul is simply the type of energy you exude, then that energy has a nature of sorts. Just like any kind of energy, it takes on a type or tone or even what might be called a personality of its own. How often are you drawn to people who radiate positive energy or are repelled by someone throwing out negative vibes? Everyone around us carries an energy, and we assess that energy in order to make decisions about them. We pick our significant others, friends, and colleagues and make our life choices based very much on the energy we receive from them. You choose the house that feels like home. You pick the puppy that tugs at your heartstrings. You pick the mate you feel like you've known forever. How real are these things, these decisions that sprout from this part of you that supposedly can't be defined? Are they really intangible? Are your thoughts intangible? What about your personality, your beliefs, your hopes and dreams, your aspirations, opinions, ambitions, fears, and insecurities? Are those intangible? No, they're very real because they're yours. They belong to you. You feel them and you know they're real because you experience them every day. And they are the things of which your soul consists. All these things combined create it. Science refers to it as the self. But every term boils down to your energy source, all the things combined that make you who you are. In Western society, we're used to believing that body and soul are mutually exclusive. But imagine for a moment that your body is just an organism, a mass of living tissue. What if it's the soul, your energy source, that makes you a thinking, feeling human? What if one relies on the other to make it what it is? The body would rely on the soul to give it life and character. But interestingly, also, the soul would require a body, a physical instrument, in order to create a visual image of the energy of what the soul is trying to say. For example, it would be impossible for the soul to manifest a smile on its own. An invisible energy source can't smile. It needs a mouth to do that. Ambitions on their own would be futile without an actual body to move this energy source forward. To have a thought to do something isn't enough. We need the body combined with the soul to make things happen in our lives. Neither can exist on their own. So could it be that we think of the body and soul as one complete entity because they are so tightly tied to each other, since they have such a close relationship? It's easy to see ourselves as the whole, but could it be that there are two elements that make up the whole of what we are? And without your soul, you can't perceive what you see around you. You can't make determinations about anything without all these traits of which your soul is made. Ironically, you can't even make a determination of whether or not you have a soul without the action of your soul, which is part of you that feels how real it is. Chances are you believe a lot of things are real. But how can you decide anything in this world is real if the self or soul that's making that determination isn't even real? And the answer is you can't. So the soul is very real and a pretty important part of you. Maybe the most important part of you, because without it, you aren't you at all. And when you struggle with emotional issues, the concept of you becomes the most crucial thing you need to understand. You realize that your soul is what you're trying to heal, not your mind or your brain. Since my early healing days, scientists have since discovered that your neurons can be healed, rewire themselves, and regenerate. But how does that happen? I believe it only happens by the way of that driving energy force inside you that sees the problem and executes an amazing power to readjust itself, known by some of us as your soul.